I am Will Kunkel. I am VP of Marketing at Stirista. As was mentioned, we are a data-focused MarTech company that helps clients all across the digital spectrum, from onboarding data, whether it be their own or ours that they license, and then activating that across all the digital channels through an identity graph that we offer that goes from CTV to paid paid social, organic social advisement, display, email, pretty much any digital marketing channel you can think of. And I'd love to give Sonia the chance to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about what she's got going on at OkCupid.
Hi, I'm Sonia Oblitey, Global Marketing Director for OkCupid. I've been with the company since 2018, and I lead all of the international marketing efforts. So really excited to join this, this panel today and share a little bit about OkCupid and where we are with the brand.
Great. So I've got a couple of questions for you. Would love to start with just knowing all the available channels and the way marketing's constantly kind of evolving, whether that be attribution or how do you utilize data, et cetera. What is the one thing, whether it's like how you start your day or the thing that keeps you up at night, what is the thing that's most top of mind for you about supporting what today's, what your users or prospects want, knowing what they want from marketing?
I think, what keeps me up at night is just being able to authentically just talk to our daters, especially being in an international role. You really have to be able to understand the nuances of dating in each market in each country. So it's just making sure that I am not being kind of like a computer, but a real person behind the campaign, and able to really get into the heart of what drives people to date, what's inherent and what's important to them, whether their cultures, and so allow people to really meet that person, with being human, we all have that fundamental need for connection. And so I just want to make sure that as an international marketer, I'm really providing that market the right, ways to connect that are culturally relevant to them. That kind of keeps me up at night and ensuring that we are really talking to that consumer in the way that resonates with them.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. I guess furthermore, on the same point, knowing that it's a bit of a crowded space and there are a lot of competitors, how do you feel that you guys have done the best job kind of differentiating yourself, or just putting yourself at the top of that list among other dating sites?
Yeah, OkCupid is an amazing brand. We've been around since 2004, and as being around this long, we've learned a lot, but we've also really been able to ensure that we speak to every dater. We're very inclusive. Matter of fact, we consider ourselves exclusively inclusive. So we're the first dating app to introduce 22 gender options, 20 orientations, and then within that, we have 60 LGBTQ identifiers. So we really pride ourselves on being the dating app that's all inclusive, that allows you to find that person without discrimination. And in addition to that, we stay in the pulse of what's going on in the market. So for instance, just yesterday, we launched our pro-choice badge, which allows users to filter on people who are pro-choice. We've launched a Black Lives Matter badge, and we've even launched a Game of Thrones badge. So, we take it there to allow people to really meet and to match on what matters to them. But that's what's really our differentiator, is that we are all inclusive.
Yeah, the interest targeting, I think, is really, really interesting too. And especially, I guess, as people have increasingly less free time. And one of the things I've lamented, like I got married right out of college, so I missed this whole boat. But I talk to people all the time about, like, back, with everybody kind of embedded in their phone, it's not the old days where you used to actually like meet people on the subway or wherever, or you know what I mean? So I think there's a reliance on the apps, and I think the kind of smoother and more linear and faster you can make it for people to, if not find the right person, but to at least eliminate people who aren't the right people, the more of a service you're doing, probably to your own brand and to them as well. And I know you mentioned it. I was actually going to congratulate you. I know you guys were named one of the top 5 apps for the LGBTQ community. So that's pretty impressive.
Yes, and like I said, we pride ourselves on that, and it's, it's a pleasure to work for a brand that is this inclusive. And just recently, we launched a campaign in the U.S. entitled "For Every Single Person," and that just represents how inclusive we are. And we were very bold, very provocative. So we had slogans for every single pansexual, for every single introvert, for every single vaccinated person. So we really wanted to just extend that offering that is for everybody, and what I think we do that's even more authentic and gives us more credibility is that campaign. We use queer couples, we use interracial couples, we use models who identified as transgender, and it just leverages the campaign message, but it also opens it to people who might feel marginalized and gives another opportunity for other models and actresses to feel included. And they were so happy when they saw the creative come out, and they just felt so proud. And we are, as OkCupid, that's what we stand for, is just allowing everybody to be who they are naturally, and then meet other people who share the same values.
I was going to ask also, just, with constantly like new channels emerging, one of the things we wrestle with, and I've wrestled with across my career, especially when I was on the agency side, is clients coming and saying like, there's this new, whatever it may be. At the time, it might have been Instagram or whatever, but there's Snapchat, there's TikTok, there's all these emerging channels. How do you decide kind of how to delineate or how to sort of, spread all your marketing across the right channels, and how do you know what channels to avoid? Are there any channels that have been particularly successful for you, and any that you've tried and maybe just weren't as successful that you now avoid?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question because it varies by market. And I'm in this unique situation or unique position where I get to test things in different markets for different, we have one target, but they differ. So for instance, in Israel just recently, we realized Snapchat didn't really work for us as well as we thought that it would. But in Germany, it works pretty well. So, and I think that's really just about thinking about the market dynamic, the penetration of their phones, how many people are really have access to even Wi-Fi, and trying to understand like the trial and error. And from my previous experiences, we used to say fail fast, fail cheap. So, once we see something is not working, we work very closely to ensure that we're able to pivot, especially with these new channels, like you test a little bit, let's try to have the right content. That's another thing, is like content matters for these new channels as well. Content that's on TikTok might not work for Instagram, which might not work for Snapchat. It's a lot that you just have to, balance and ensure that it's authentic. And this consumer who's consuming, who's on TikTok and on Snapchat, they know when it's fake. They don't want to be talked to by the brand. They don't want to know that their influencers being paid. So you really have to have the right content before you can even rule out if it didn't work or not. So you have to just kind of balance that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, like as Facebook has gotten older, there are audiences that make sense for Facebook that people probably just anecdotally assumed didn't make sense a few years back. But you know what I mean? Everybody I know, literally, that, like that phrase, everybody and their grandmother, but literally everybody I know and their grandmother is on Facebook in some capacity. And then my mother-in-law is 81 and spends way too much time on TikTok. So it's tough sometimes to just look at raw data. Yeah, oh yeah, she's on there all day. And like,
any of the dances? Does she do it?
She doesn't do much of the dancing herself at this point. She's got a little joint stuff going on, but she watches it. She constantly is like asking my wife it's really funny. She asks if she's seen this, like as if it was sent privately to her. You know what I mean? Or like, but she was, it was great when we were teaching her how to use like all the social apps, because Facebook, like one of our cousins would post pictures and she would just reply like, thank you so much for sending these to me. She thought everything was like a DM or a private message. It was great. But conversely, I've had clients over the years who said like, our audience is an average of 68 years old. What should we be doing on Snapchat? And I'm like, just statistically, probably nothing. You don't have to work in every channel if it doesn't work for you. And
exactly.
I liked your whole testing, fail fast and fail cheap. That's great, because I think that's the one thing digital affords all of us, that, if you put a billboard up in Times Square and it's a flop, that's an expensive flop, and it's literally hard to take down, and same with like linear TV spots, but you can test a little bit more on channels like CTV, and you can email, I always say email may not be the world's sexiest marketing channel, but it works and it lets you test fast and lets you test cheap. And great ROI still. So
and it allows for attribution, which is what I do like a lot about these channels, is you're able to actually see this, what did I get from this? It makes it easier, especially as an app, a tech company, makes it easy for us to have that direct call to action, versus a billboard or versus TV, even though I am seeing a lot of changes with, TV with QR codes. I think QR codes have come a long way, especially with COVID.
Yep.
And something that I definitely want to explore within my brand as a direct call to action. I think that could be something potentially that could really allow for ease for the users, especially when it comes to dating. You always put off downloading this dating app until someone might help you with the profile, but this would be something to help people just like in the moment, just download.
Yeah, and to your point, QR codes kind of came in and went out, and now, like you said, with COVID, every restaurant has a QR code. I think people behaviorally are just accustomed to it and comfortable with it now.
Exactly.
I wanted to ask you about the global part of your job, because I know you referenced it a little bit earlier, but I would imagine it's challenging to know kind of the nuances of all the different cultures and and I know you mentioned before, like that Snapchat might work in one country and might not work in another. I know you also launched a German campaign recently. How do those campaigns come to be about? And I don't know if you guys do everything in-house or work with an agency, so maybe you can touch on that too, but how do you handle this sort of groundwork and research required to know what's going to work in all the various regions?
Yeah, so that's a very complicated, loaded question, especially when it comes to dating, because I'm not selling a one-size-fits-all product. It's not a can of soda.
Right.
You really need to have the understanding of your market. So for the markets that we are actively in, we do have great agency support, and we also do employ country managers, who are there, who are on the ground, and who are able to, understand the language. And, my role is to ensure that our brand positioning is replicated throughout the world. So for our core messages match on what matters. So we just launched this campaign in Germany 2 weeks ago, and it's about better matches for all. But what we've done is taking the US creative for every single person, which used bold images. I encourage everyone to go ahead and Google it right now. You'll be shocked, you'll be surprised, but pleasantly surprised. And what we did was we took that creative and then we fit it for Germany. We fit it for Berlin specifically because we knew that would work, that bold, provocative message. But we changed the message from for every single person to date someone as blank as you, because we really wanted to ensure that the brand USP of our thousands of questions and our algorithm was communicated through this creative. And we did this because Germany is one of our newer markets. So, the brands had a different life cycle, life stage versus in the US where it's more established. So we can use the same creative and optimize the message either for where we are with the brand's, life cycle, and to match the market. Now, on the flip side, we wouldn't use that creative in Turkey, but we would keep the same messaging for, which is match on what matters. And their campaign that we launched in Turkey was fantastic because it was really about finding someone for you. So it's, either being real bold, real provocative, and then finding someone for you. But at the same time, at the heart of the messaging, it's all about breaking a traditional norm in certain markets. So in Turkey, in India, in Indonesia, where most of the history of the country when it comes to dating has been matchmaking or going through a different channel outside of dating someone that you would choose. Right. We really want to then use OkCupid as the vehicle of you can now date somebody who suits you, So, yeah. And I think this is a good lesson of being able to translate your brand positioning different across markets when you're in a category that might not be a commodity.
Yeah, and I really like what you said about you're not selling a can of soda, right? I've made that point frequently because I do a lot of B2B stuff, but I think in some ways I have the same challenge, even though you're a consumer brand, really, at the end of the day, that you do, because not only are you trying to foster relationships, but you're trying to build a relationship with those users. And it sometimes is a longer tail initiative. Like I've always said that if you get served an ad for tires and you happen to have 2 flat tires, it's an immediate sort of transactional relationship, and you know, you need to transact. But in a lot of what we do, we're trying to build interest in the brand primarily, and then educate and retarget with messages based on what they've looked at before. But again, it's relationship building as opposed to that instant kind of transactional, or you
Yeah.
know, you're not booking a flight like you said, or you know, you're doing something that's a little bit more, probably a little bit more personal, a little bit more meaningful for sure.
Yeah, and you know, with OkCupid, we have, like I mentioned, we have thousands of questions, but you know, our first 15 to 20 onboarding questions are really to help you set up your profile. But we take our time to look at every market, all of the questions, work with the right agency partners and the country managers to ensure that the questions make sense for that market. Because one question in the US will not mean anything to somebody, even in the UK. And you have to think that just because I think I know the UK doesn't mean that I know the UK.
Right.
Oh, and there's certain questions that we found that we thought were, you know, great questions, like in Germany, like, do you attend Oktoberfest? And the feedback was, this was not written by somebody who knows the German culture, because, you know, it came from a US lens. And I've learned that, you know, and it's there's a lot of trust involved in this position, because we're trusting and we're relying on these cultural experts to help, you know, make us more authentic in the market. But you know, but the great thing is we get consumer feedback all the time. We get it all the time. We have our reviews that we scour through to ensure that we're, you know, just we're not speaking to ourselves, and we understand like what exactly our consumers think of us, and we can implement changes or pivot if we need to.
Yeah, is that based on the consumer feedback? Is that why it's so centric on kind of helping them build the profile? Does that seem like the biggest impediment for most people, is just kind of getting started and getting that profile done?
Definitely getting your profile done. And the great thing about OkCupid, and you know, a lot of dating apps is, but we have a lot of tips to help you with your profile, with the pictures and answering the questions. And then from there, we try to make it very seamless. So we integrate the questions with the products. As you're scrolling through, you'll get a new question. You scroll through, you get a new question. Try not to make it too daunting. I think dating in general can be very daunting. Online dating especially, but building a profile is where it starts, you know, and you have to have a great profile. And we want it to be fun and interactive, and we encourage people to build with their friends, you know, build with their family, and have fun with it.
Yeah, I've gotten to live vicariously through friends since I never did it, but I've helped a few of them with with
Yes,
profiles.
it's great to do at dinner, right? Whip out your phone and let's build a profile together.
Yeah, we had one friend who never took pictures, so that was the biggest challenge. So we set him up and posed him about 400 different ways, trying to find a good shot. It was fun. Oh yeah, I have to ask the obligatory question. I know, I'm sure you'll be shocked that this is coming about COVID, but I wanted to know, I guess twofold, right? How has COVID impacted your sort of approach to marketing and planning going forward? And how have you, knowing you have kind of an immensely sizable responsibility team-wise, both in the US and globally, how have you kept, so it's really like two parts. How have you kept your employees and your team members engaged throughout COVID?
Yeah, so I think, you know, with COVID, every marketer, I think no matter what your industry, had to take a step back and think through their strategy and think through the tactics. I know for me, I was just about to launch an out-of-home campaign. I had all the posters printed, everything ready to go. So obviously we knew people were not going to be out. So we pivoted, but what we also did was we changed our message, you know, to it's okay, times have changed, you know, but we're here for you to build connection, because in the business we're in, it's all about connections. And when you're home, whether you're alone and uncertain of what's going to happen in the future, we wanted to be there for our users and to let them know that it's not hard. It's easy to use. We're here for you. So that was part of the pivot, was a change in messaging, you know, being sensitive to that. In working internationally, you had to really monitor closely all of the COVID cases throughout the, you know, the world, and that was also quite challenging to ensure that I was able to just kind of stay on top of all the markets and what's going on with COVID and everything. But I would say it did give us an opportunity to connect deeper with our users, and we, like a lot of dating apps, we did see an increase in usage with our daily active users and our monthly active users. But it just goes to show the need for connection. And that lent itself to us, as a team internally. It's funny, I never felt so close to my colleagues because now they could see my bedroom and they can see
Yeah.
my apartment. And, I've met so many of my colleagues' kids and dogs. So I actually think it broke a lot of barriers for us. We've gotten to know each other in a way that we weren't quite expecting to right away. And I think it, in a sense, brought out a lot of like the empathy in people. Our CEO, he's been quite a force behind just staying connected and being connected. And you saw the human side of people, and we continue to, and I think it actually has made the team stronger in that sense.
Yeah,
and that also goes for my agency partners as well.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to see the way this, like what the long tail effect on this is in terms of, do we go to a permanent kind of like, especially for organizations who it's worked really well, do we go to a permanent kind of modified or like part-time, like, is everybody going to be remote? Are people going to be in the office sometimes, out of the office sometimes? It's really, it's funny, my one cousin is in software, and he works with a lot of like Fortune 500 CEOs. Mm-hmm. And he said all these guys that were super intimidating in person years ago or by phone, in their suits and stuff, he's like, now they're in band t-shirts or like a dirty Adidas or Nike t-shirt. You're doing Zooms. It's like, it really, to your point, it does really humanize people. I think aside from the fact that my eyesight's gotten significantly worse with all the Zoom and Teams and Google Meet, I think it really has made me in some ways feel like closer to the people on my team and kind of see what they have going on at home and them, me, et cetera,
Yeah, I know it has created a lot of Zoom fatigue. And I know my company we're testing a no meeting Thursday, which I think I was very excited for, because then you get to focus, because it is a lot to be on Zooms all day, and it allows you to not feel guilty if you're not in a meeting or constantly interaction, and you can like just focus on the work that you have at hand for that day.
Yeah, we've implemented kind of a soft rule. Like if we don't need to be seeing what each other's doing and it's like a 15-minute catch up, feel free to just call me if you'd rather do that than Zoom. Like I know what you look like by now. Because I do. And the dueling Zooms was tough. My wife's a teacher. So for the first, for the beginning in the spring of 2020 now, I guess, in the spring, she was in one side of the house teaching a class remotely. I was in the other working remotely, and it was a little bit of vibrating noise. It was a little tougher, but now that she's back in school and it's cleared out, it's a little bit more humane here at home.
Yeah, you definitely had to increase that internet bandwidth.
Oh yeah, that for sure. And I actually wound up having to go, I'm not using it right now, but I had to go build out an office because there was no other way. So yeah. I guess the last couple of questions I wanted to tackle were, one, CSR. I think CSR and social causes in general have really come to the forefront. Some brands have done a great job. Some brands have done no job because they just kind of want to avoid it. And some brands have, maybe misfired, but I know you guys are particularly proud of what you've done in the sort of the CSR and cause related space. I'd love to hear a little bit more about some of the recent efforts and why you feel so strongly about that.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the most important pillars of OkCupid is our CSR efforts, and it's probably one of my most proudest moments of working with the brand. So when Black Lives Matter, with the whole, resurgence of Black Lives Matter and the protest, OkCupid instantly dropped everything that we were doing that was on our calendars. And we said to ourselves, it was over a weekend till we all huddled and said, what can we do to support this community? And I'm very proud that we donated $1 million of advertising space in our platform to various Black organizations. We launched our Black Lives Matter badge so that our users can show their support for Black Lives Matter. And back to donating the ad space. So that's not just a one-time thing. That's going to go for a few years. We're going to continue to donate to worthy organizations because that to me is what's important in building the community, is helping building the businesses and organizations. But it's not just Black Lives Matter. OkCupid is very active with Planned Parenthood. Matter of fact, I know that we're in partnership with Planned Parenthood when we launched the pro-choice badge yesterday. So with OkCupid, it's not that we just say that we are a CSR focused company, but we really are authentic and true to these organizations. And I think our users have come to expect that OkCupid will be part of these conversations and support. And it's exciting. And it's not just one person who pushes this through, but it's a total company supported the whole organization stops what they're doing when we know that we need to help support a cause. And it's not always easy when you're working with programmers and software engineers and they're working on something that is specific and timed. So to stop and do these things, it does take a lot of pivot and a lot of agility from the team.
Yeah, I think it's super impressive that you guys literally put your money where your mouth is too, right? It's easy to say something, but to, back that up. And like you said, with the fact that you're going to be doing the ongoing sort of, allocating or donating, advertising space is super impressive. And I also think your brand probably has a lot more credibility in that space because it's a people related brand. I think there was some strange, I remember getting some strange emails during the protests and during COVID from brands that didn't necessarily feel authentic, but I think to your point, you guys have done more than just make a simple statement. I think you've done everything to engender the fact that it is authentic and a real concern. Like I said, the fact that you've carried it out through, even through like the user experience and the questions that you, or questions or drop downs that you offer your users. I think it makes it feel a lot more like real and a lot more holistic.
Yeah, we want to be active and we want to join the conversations. And we also understand that when it comes to dating, that's important as well. You want to date somebody because whether it's your political views, if you are in a marginalized community, that's usually pretty important to you, as a user. So we want to make sure that they have that option at their fingertips to be able to filter out or filter in whoever they're looking for, who shares that strong of a passion. You know what I mean? So very proud for a company that focuses on.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just gonna say we've come a long way from when I broke up with my high school girlfriend because she didn't know who my favorite band was. So I guess we've been for however many years we've all been kind of doing.
Who is your favorite band? Is it still your favorite band right now?
No, God, no. It was a long time ago, but it was. But it's I guess we've all had our own checklists of what's a deal breaker and what's not. I guess my threshold probably changed over the years, but in high school it was pretty dogmatic, I guess.
I think about some of my favorite bands. I don't even know where they are at this point, but yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. I guess the last thing is just knowing that you have so much going on. Is there, whether it be current trends or sort of things that are coming, forthcoming in marketing or in advertising, is there anything you wish you were doing more of or could be doing more of that you haven't really gotten to tackle super deeply yet, just because of bandwidth?
Yeah, I think, just for me personally, two things. I wish I could really talk to our customers around the world, like being able to travel and being able to conduct focus groups there in their country, go on first dates with them to see how people date. I wish I could do that, and that's really, that's something that is just about a matter of, it is COVID, it's hard to travel, but there's also a lot of just due to time, it's hard to do. It's a little expensive as well. But I do think, on the business side, I would like to focus more on growth and more on acquisitions and trying to crack the code on retention a little bit more for me personally, and to understand kind of the nuances of some of the KPIs and the measurements behind all of that growth, the growth levers and those channels as well.
Yeah, are there any sort of favorite pieces of user feedback you've gotten or anything you're particularly proud of? I mean, aside from the stuff you guys are doing internally, just in terms of what you've gotten back from the people who use the platform.
Oh my, there's a lot of feedback that we get, but I love our success stories. People who've met on the app, people who have struggled to meet people, and then, they'll share with us that they met their person from, the app, right when they're about to give up. Those are my favorite stories. And then we get their wedding invitations, and we would post them on the wall. It's just like, that's the good feeling that you get every day. It's like when you know that you're able to connect people in such a emotional way. But I say, like, most of the time I love when I hear people say that they love our questions, because it's something that takes an extra step, for people to really enjoy answering the questions. Just knows that we're doing something right. So I enjoy that. But I just love to see success. The success is just seeing when people get together and get off our platform.
Yeah, and I think because it's so personal, I think the success stories are probably to like your brand, it's that much more impactful. You know what I mean? Like, it's great. Like we said earlier, if it's a car brand and somebody's happy with their car, but if they're happy with their life partner, it's a lot more impactful, because you probably change your car every 3 or 5 years, presumably. Hopefully you're not going to change your
And
life.
success stories give other people hope. They see, like, oh, these two met on OkCupid,
Yeah,
possibly me.
it's been a really fascinating shift. I mean, like, I would say over the last 10 years, between my wife and I, we've met a million different couples, whether it be through work or whatever, who met initially on an app. You know what I mean? That certainly, I would say, 10, 15 or more years ago wasn't the case, but it's definitely working. And I think it's, I think it's like sort of the primary go-to for a lot of people. We're all busy and we've lived busy lives, and especially with the no commute over the last couple of years, it's probably even more up leveled.
Yeah. And if you think about that, this is in the US market that you're hearing these success stories. So what I'm excited about is kind of breaking the barriers of people, some of the countries where it's still a little taboo to date online. And that's what I get to do every day, is we get to go into some of these emerging countries and kind of like, hopefully change the perception of online dating.
Yeah, I was just looking at questions. It's like I think it's a bit early, but one person's comment was just, keep up the good work, Sonia, absolutely phenomenal. So I think you'll take that, right? That's not a question, but it's a nice pat on the back for sure. We have a couple of minutes left. Is there anything else you want to cover off on? Anything you're particularly excited about for 2022, aside from us hopefully all getting back to some kind of more normal, new normal?
Definitely looking forward to getting back to normal in 2022. But I would say, as a dating app, I just want to follow this momentum, because as COVID was and it still is very difficult for people, but we were able to connect a lot more people. And I think that even chipped more and more barriers of people who were a little hesitant to use dating apps. So now, in 2022, I'm just trying to roll with it and trying to get more and more people to just take a chance. I'm also really excited about trying new channels. With being a dating app, there's so much you can do. There's so many people we could work with, whether it's a big time influencer, we can do a lot of sponsorships. Just like the marketing calendar is just a huge opportunity when you work for a dating app, and then you get to then do that globally, is even more fun. So I'm just excited about 2022, and I hope that, we're able to really have a year that allows us to bring people together even more so.
Have you guys had a lot of internal success stories as well among employees using it?
That is such a good question. Not always, but I will say we have success stories across brands. So, Match Group owns plenty of dating apps,
Sure.
like Tinder and Hinge and Plain Fish, and we've had success stories across all of them. So whether I am at OkCupid, I meet someone on Hinge or someone, it's still a success story. But yeah, it's funny enough, I think we're not a very huge team. So the chances of us all meeting on OkCupid are kind of small. And a lot of our team members are in relationships or married.
Yeah, and they probably know all the algorithms and know all the questions. They're too good at it, probably.
Yeah, it's funny because just a handful of us are single.
Oh, it's funny. Yeah, it's fun, definitely different arena, but we actually, like, even for our company, we always say I don't think it's the most attractive phrase, but our CEO always says, like, eating our own, dog food, but it's the same principle. Like, we use our own platforms to launch all our own self-promotional stuff, right? Because if we're trying to get people to pay for it and use it, it's like, we've got to be doing it ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, we're all definitely on it, but Whether you're using it to find somebody is another story.
Yeah. Anything else anything you want to just close on? Any thoughts or anything? Like I said, we're light on questions, but I think we're both kind of quick talkers too. So it's both
Yeah,
that New York thing.
it must be, right. Not really. I'm honored to be here, and when it comes to storytelling, I think, love is a beautiful story to tell.
Yeah, I can't think of too many more exciting different kinds of brands to be working for. I mean, it must be
Yeah.
it must be super exciting, just whether it be the success stories or the funny stories or whatever. Just it's you're playing a pretty big part. You're probably the most important, one of the 2 or 3 most important things somebody's going to tackle in their lifetime.
Our brainstorming sessions are the most fun.
Oh, I bet.
Will make you blush.
Yeah, I guess it's tough to figure out where you're crossing, where that line begins and ends, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have fun with what we do. It's not quite as fun as what you guys are doing over there, I would say, though.
Yeah.
All right, well, it was really great talking to you. I appreciate it. If anybody, like I said, has any questions, please drop them in. Otherwise, I think we'll let you guys get on to the next session.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank
wait.
you so much.
There you are.
Thank you both so much. That was fantastic. I loved, obviously telling the story of love is such a great, building connections is such a fun story to get to tell. And I love that anecdote you mentioned about having, in Germany, would you talk about Oktoberfest, and they wouldn't. And it's funny because I'm sitting here in Switzerland and there's people speaking different languages on one side of the street and on the other side of the street. And I know culturally trying to understand like what is right. And I have friends who are dating and, using these apps. And I always hear the funny stories of definitely like a very huge mixture of cultures here in Europe and language and just kind of how and dating itself has like a funny, weird nuance of culture. And so I think that you guys are kind of doing the magic sauce by bringing it all together and just testing it. And I really enjoyed hearing your story.
My friend told me the first time he went to Australia, he ordered a Foster's because it was the only thing he knew. It was, the old Foster's, it's Australian for beer commercial. And everybody looked at him like he had 7 heads. And the bartender was like, no one drinks that here. That's only on TV. So.
Exactly. Well, thank you both so much.
Thank you. And thank you, Sonia.
Thank you.
I will. Bye, Sonia.
Bye-bye.
Okay, next up.